Hello guys, Beast here, how's it going? So today we're going to start off the super beginner tanking guide. So this is really going to be aimed at someone who's never tanked before or that's tanked before and it didn't go very well. You need a bit of advice and it's going to set you up for dungeons really. We're not going to talk about raiding here. Some of these tips that we're going to talk about will help you out within raids, but as I'm not very experienced as a tank in a raid, I'm just going to talk about dungeons really. So it's going to be for setting you up for leveling and for Mythic Plus and all that kind of stuff. I want to keep it quite concise and simple, just like all beginner level stuff. So we're going to talk about setting up your UI, and we're going to talk about your abilities and talents, knowing what you should be taking. This is going to be general for every class. It doesn't really matter what class you play. It's going to talk about tanks in general. We're going to have a little look at macros and see if your class needs any macros for tanking. We're going to talk about active mitigation, what that is and what you should do. And we're going to look at your gear, talk about essences a little bit, and just basically this is like a setup video to get you ready to do your first dungeon or your first raid. So that's what we're going to do today, guys, and then the series will follow on. After this one we'll go and do a dungeon and we'll talk about that and the mindset for tanking and all that business. So this is like the setup guide. So without further ado, let's kick it off. Alright guys, so here I am on my Demon Hunter. He's currently level 112. I'm leveling him up. First of all, I do recommend that when you want to start tanking, if you're really like nervous about it or worried, then make a new character if you want to do that, or level an existing one up, and just do some questing as in your tank spec and basically learn how it plays. And tank low level dungeons as well, because they're super easy. People are usually a little more forgiving than they are in end game dungeons, so if you're really worried, just level up a tank and start from the beginning. It's the best way to learn because you get all your abilities steadily, you know, in a nice fashion, and you'll unlock your talents and you'll get used to things as they come rather than everything all at once. But if you want to just make one of your existing characters a tank, then just go for it and obviously activate your tank spec. Have a little look at what you can do. So here we are on the Demon Hunter, and like I said, I'm going to talk generally about all the tanks. It's not just going to be specific for Demon Hunter tanks, so don't worry about that. So the first thing you want to think about is your UI. So as a tank, you don't really necessarily need to have a UI adjusted like a healer would. For example, like my unit frames, my party frames and raid frames can stay over here. I don't want them to be in the middle. Not necessarily anyway. Some people do prefer that. You just basically want to have a clean UI so that you can see everything around you. You can react to, you know, if a mob pulls from afar, you can react to it and you can see. You can just clearly have a little look around, and you know always what's going on in the dungeon or in the raid. So I recommend this UI that I use. I'll do a little video on the updated version of this if you like. If you do want to see that, please just request it in the comments and I'll know to get around to doing that sooner rather than later. I've done a video on this in the past. I'll link it in the description below actually. I'll link the UI import string. It's LVUI that I use currently, as you can see there. So the next thing you want to do is check your abilities. So if you go on this bit, of course, it will give you a quick overview of, you know, your important abilities, what they can do. What I'd recommend doing first is, if you're unsure which tank to play, go somewhere like Icy Veins. So let's have a look at this. So you can go over to Icy Veins here, and if you can see your class, so if you basically go onto classes and then, you know, choose your thing, they've also got a nice handy actual tanking guide straight up for Battle for Azeroth, just to basically tell you what you should be doing, what you should be thinking about, all the tanking lingo, such as threat, aggro, all that business. You know, just everything you need to know basically. That's worth reading this first before you jump in, before you start thinking specifically about your class. So then I would obviously go to the Vengeance Demon Hunter one. They have literally everything you could think of in here to tell you about your class. So I would see, this is just a quick overview and what you're good at, what you're bad at, and then you can go and check out your talents. So what I would do is they usually have like cookie cutter builds here, suggested builds. I would copy this one, copy either of these. If you're really nervous, obviously go for the survivability one. Most classes do have these survivability, or sometimes they're trying to maximize damage as well when they're comfortable with it. But if you're really nervous and it's your first time, go for the survivability. Once you've done that, go in the game and just basically have a look at what you can do. So these are suggested talents, so basically see what these things do. So there you can see obviously it creates AoE damage, so that's going to be good for getting AoE threat. Threat is of course when making the mobs attack you. The person that's got the highest threat in the group is the one that the mob is going to be attacking. So that's that. take note of your active mitigation. So that basically means active mitigation is when someone hits you and you have an ability on that is going to reduce the amount of damage that that hit does. So that could be in the form of a shield, as in like a paladin's shield. For demon hunters, that is demon armor. Where is it? Demon spikes. Oh, I'm not in the right spec. What an absolute amateur. Let's change over. Let's change over. So we've got demon spikes, surge's power, increasing your armor by 1,000 and your parry chance by 15. So that is known as active mitigation. We've also got soul cleave. This isn't active mitigation. This is kind of like a reactive ability, because then it's going to heal me. So you have active and reactive abilities usually as a tank, and you want to know what yours is. So for example, for a warrior, this could be shield wall, or it could be ignore armor, things like that. That's your kind of active mitigation that you want to go for. I recommend as well, going back to the UI stuff, install deadly boss mods, because that will actually tell you when a boss has an ability that's going to hit quite hard or is quite an important one to be aware of. It will tell you use defensive. So it'll say, you know, boss is casting such a thing, use a defensive. I generally, talking about keybinds, have the same kind of things for each class. So Q is always my interrupt. I just think like quick. R is always my kind of initiation ability, so it could be charge on a warrior. For here it's infernal strike, you know, I'm initiating combat, I'm running in there. Shift Q is always something to do with either a stun or a silence, and as you can see there, that's that. My active mitigation usually is shift 1, shift 2, and any, you know, important abilities that you don't use all the time, only in certain situations, go on my F. So F1, F2, I can see them, you know, quickly. And then the abilities that you use all the time, they can just go down here on 1, 2, 3, 4. They're always useful. And then you want to make sure, if you've got an interrupt, get it bound somewhere where you're going to always be able to use it, because that's quite important. As a tank, you'll probably only have a melee range interrupt, so because obviously you're going to be hitting things in the face, so you're going to want to know where that is and use it a lot. Just make sure everything's bound so you can access it nice and quick. Another important thing obviously is your taunt. Now I always put my taunt on T for taunt. It's just dead easy, so in the heat of the moment I don't need to really think about it. I know exactly where it is straight away. T for taunt. So because it's battle for Azeroth, if you're leveling up, obviously don't worry about this for now. I'm not going to go into specifics about Azerite traits or essences, but of course you do need to be aware that there are specific ones for tanks and for DPS and for healers. So you need to be aware that you get correct traits for a tanking role. And again, if you go back to Icy Veins, it will literally have the right ones that you should have here. So Azerite traits, it'll recommend the best ones and it'll tell you about what's good in what situation, so you can just think about that yourself. And then of course they've got the essences too. So if you've already got your character max level, chances are you probably will have already gained some essences from your adventures as a DPS or a healer, whatever you've been, and you can probably just pop them on straight away and get into it. So what I would say is, once you've got your bar set up and everything, just get yourself in there and just start doing stuff. Just start using your abilities, see what they all do, get a feel for it, pull a few mobs, see what you can handle, and, you know, get used to what things do. So I know that this is going to reduce the damage he does to me by 40%. So just like play around with things, test your active mitigation, you know, and just basically go for it. And then, once you've done all those things, you've got your UI set up as you like it, you've got all your important abilities keybound. Remember that if you go into your book, and if something isn't bound, obviously like I'm not going to bind glide, it will flash. So just go through your spell book, make sure you've got everything there. Because if you've got something like a dispel, and you've not got it bound, that could be the difference between life and death in a group situation. Now, a little bit about macros. As a Demon Hunter tank, I don't need any different macros. There isn't any that I need. As a druid, for example, you have the ability to remove things like curses and poisons and all that business, so I would definitely have that bound. I usually bind that to shift R for like remove, like shift remove is like SR, so it's like shit remove. Like somebody's got a debuff, shit remove. And that's usually what I do, very glamorous way of thinking about it. So I use mouse over macros, so they look like this. Let me just find one. This is how you create a macro, just real quick. Obviously you can just call it something like RC for like remove curse. It would just basically say show tooltip, and then you don't necessarily need to stop casting, because you probably won't be casting, but if you're a paladin, for example, you might be casting flash heal. You might want to just stop that to remove a really nasty curse or something, so you can put that in there if you want to, and then it just basically follows that exact format, slash cast, and then the brackets at mouse over flash heal. So then you can literally, well, obviously you won't be using flash heal, it'll be something like remove curse, so you would just type in remove, not like that. This is supposed to be a well done video. So you just type in something like remove curse and then save it, put that on your bar, bam, pop it on there, and then you'll be able to use that in a pinch. So there we go. Have a little play around with everything once you're set up and you're feeling comfortable, and then it's time to go into a dungeon. And what we'll do, we will do this in the next video, so I don't want to make this too long. Make sure obviously you've got your tank icon selected, and there you go, and you can enjoy the fast queues. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to keep up with this series and if you want more guides like this and just other general World of Warcraft content. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I've been LaserBeast, and I'll see you in the first dungeon tanking video.